Hi everyone, how are you today? I'm doing good. I wanted to talk today about shortness of breath and O2. Um, this seems to come up a lot with people who have lung conditions and also different heart conditions. And I hear a lot of times that people ask, I'm short of breath, so why doesn't my doctor prescribe O2 for me? Or I'm on O2 and I'm still short of breath, and why is that? So I wanted to just talk about this some more today. I think it's a topic that affects everybody who has lung and heart issues at some point or another to varying degrees. So I just wanted to get into it more today. But before I do that, I just want to state my plan for today. I haven't had a lot of time to record videos over the past few weeks, and so today I have a lot of free time on my hands. So I was going to record 3 different videos. That's the plan. I can't guarantee that that'll happen, but I'm going to try. There are 3 different videos on 3 completely different topics, and so I'm going to number them as usual. It'll be video 60, 61, and 62, but since they're all being recorded in the same day, I'm going to do part 1, part 2, and part 3 is my plan. And, I'll break them up according to the topic. And so, yeah, that's what I'm going to try to do. And so, hopefully I will get all of them done, but I'm going to start with the most important one. And like I said, that is this one right here, which is shortness of breath and O2. So basically, I've got some notes because I've went over this in my head many times because there's so many different parts of it that need to be covered to kind of get it to make sense, that I hope you don't mind that I'm kind of looking at my notes too. But so back to the question of why O2 helps or doesn't help, and why some people who are short of breath are prescribed O2 or not. First, let's tackle the one that people that are short of breath who aren't prescribed O2. You would most likely not be prescribed O2 if your shortness of breath does not affect your saturation levels. So in other words, you're getting the sensation of being short of breath, but your body isn't actually lacking in oxygen. So your stats are 87 or above for your oxygen saturation levels when a doctor tests you. And if he only tests you sitting still and you have trouble moving and getting into shortness of breath, make sure that you get tested while you're moving, because a lot of people who do not have trouble being still, their oxygen sats drop when they start, with activity. So there's a lot of lung conditions and heart conditions that only affect your saturation levels when you're active. So you want to make sure that you're covering all your bases and having them checked both at rest and during activity. So if you are short of breath and your doctor has not prescribed O2, then the likely reason is that you're testing out above 87 for your oxygen saturation levels. So that means your body is absolutely fine with the level of oxygen it is getting, and you're just getting the sensation of being short of breath. And that can come from different things. It can come from your heart having trouble handling the fluids, and so with that, it makes it feel as if you're short of breath. Also, it can come from having a super high heart rate. When your heart rate tends to go up, you tend to get a shortness of breath feeling. It does not mean that your oxygen levels for sure have to drop. You might just be getting a sensation of being short of breath from the high heart rate. People with asthma too, and other certain lung ailments may get a feeling of shortness of breath, and their saturation levels may not drop. So it really depends. Some people who have PH are on oxygen and others don't require it at all. So every situation is different, and not all situations are the same all the time. So with your heart, it can be related to the strength of your heart pumping, the amount of fluids in your body. It can even be artery related, with constricted or restricted blood flow. It can also be affected by iron, whether you're low in iron or not. Call that anemic. And when it's to a certain point, it definitely will affect your oxygen saturation, because iron is what supplies your red blood cells and helps them carry oxygen to different parts of the body. So when you're low in iron, it creates being low in red blood cells, and that causes low oxygen saturation. If it's lung related, it can be caused by excess mucus, scar tissue, air trapping, damaged tissue, and things like that. And again, all of these things are not equal all the time. So you may have some days where you don't have a problem with shortness of breath, or some days where you have much more of a problem with shortness of breath. It just depends on so many different things. Conditions that are always changing that can affect your shortness of breath are air quality, whether it's hot or cold outside, humid or dry, the barometric pressures, whether you're well rested or if you're tired, whether you have a full stomach or an empty stomach, whether you've eaten salt, or surpassed the recommended salt dose for your day. That will help you retain fluids. And when you start retaining fluids, you'll find that you usually get more shorter breath. So too much fluids, if you've drank too many liquids for the day, that will also cause that to happen if your body has trouble managing the fluids. And at the opposite end of the extreme, if you are low on fluids, dehydrated, that can also cause the feeling of shortness of breath, or cause one to feel like it's harder to breathe and that you're not getting your full amount of air, and that it can actually make it feel like it's harder to breathe, like your lungs get stiffer. So everything counts. And then another thing that really needs to be mentioned with this as well is that our bodies tend to get greedy, and it's that way with anything. So with most things, everything, exercise, when we start exercising, at first it only takes a little bit of exercise to get our bodies to react to it. And then once they get used to it, then it requires more and more and more, and you have to get creative in the ways that you design your workouts so that you can achieve results without extending the time out more and more and more. If our bodies had their way, they would require you to work out all the time, by the end of it, so that like I said, everything gets greedy. You always want more. Whatever you give your body, it wants more of. So, and it doesn't matter whether it's good or bad. It's the same with medications. A lot of times, at first, the medication will really help you, and then the longer you're on it, the more you require. And so, it's either way. It can be a good thing, it can be a bad thing, and it's no different with O2. So when you first got put on O2, if it was something that helped your shortness of breath, you could feel the oxygen going into your nose when you first put it on, and it felt like a lot of air was blowing in, and you could get that sensation of the feeling that your need for the extra air was being satisfied. And once you had it on for a while and you've been wearing it and you got used to it, you probably noticed that you had to start checking to see if you could feel an airflow. Like you might put it towards your lip or somewhere else so that you could feel and make sure your air was on, because maybe sometimes you get the feeling like you're not getting enough air. So that's telling you that your body has gotten used to it. And if you want to definitely, when you have that feeling, you want to definitely check your stats with oximeter. I carry one at all times. I've shown you this before. You definitely always want to check your stats, because a lot of times it'll say that your oxygen saturation level is fine, even though you have the sensation that you are feeling short of breath. So even though you've gotten used to the airflow coming in, you no longer feel it, and that makes you feel like you're short of breath, and it gives you the sensation that you need to turn the air up. This is not something that you want to keep doing, because if you keep doing that where you turn the air up because you can't feel it, pretty soon your body will require that amount to keep you satisfied, and then you'll have to go to a higher level and a higher level, and it'll make it more difficult for you to stay active because you'll require such a high meter flow. So you want to make sure that you definitely need to turn it up before you turn it up. So even if I have the feeling of shortness of breath, the first thing that I will do is check my oxygen saturation level, and make sure that I actually need to turn it up. Even now, when I'm talking, when I do a lot of talking, I sometimes feel short of breath, and I do right now, and I just check my oxygen saturation level, and as you can see, it's at 95 and my heart rate is at 97. So neither of my stats are super high, and still I might have a little bit of that feeling of shortness of breath. So you really want to pay attention to whether your body needs it to be turned up. And then there's other situations too where turning it up can actually make your shortness of breath worse. And some of you may have noticed this. For those with COPD, and if you have air trapping, or if you have damaged tissue where your gas exchange is not good, or even the pH where your lungs aren't opening and are rather stiff and don't work as good getting air in and out. With all of that, you may notice that sometimes you may turn the O2 up, and at first it feels better, but after a little bit of time you start feeling more short of breath, and you may even get a headache, or some confusion may set in. And what that's telling you is you may have some air trapping. So the air is going in at a faster rate, but it's not coming out at the same rate. So then you're left with less and less and less space for the new air coming in. So then you're not breathing in a normal exchange, and you're actually getting less oxygen by turning it up and doing more. So for sure with certain things you want to really be careful. You also may be a CO2 retainer, and if you are, you don't want your oxygen saturation levels to be kept too high, because you'll retain additional CO2 from that, which will also give you the feeling of shortness of breath. It'll make you extremely tired. So it can take a little bit of doing to figure out exactly where that sweet spot is for those of you on oxygen. I remember when I first came home from the hospital, I would get times where I would just, at first I would feel perfect, and then all of a sudden it would feel like confusion would start to set in, and I would just kind of lose focus. And I started realizing that when that happens, I actually have my air turned up too high. A lot of times too, if I'm doing something that I'm using a tube for, the canisters for air. So if I'm actively cleaning the house and everything and I'm using a canister for air, when I run out of air, I'll actually get a sensation of tiredness and hunger. It's really kind of weird. So I'll feel like I'm really hungry, and it'll kind of feel like my lungs are really dry. And then when I check and I see that I'm out of air and I realize it and I, fix the problem, all those sensations go away. So our body has tons of different ways of telling us that our air levels or O2 saturations are not quite right, or that the air exchange is not working quite right. So if we just learn to pay attention to the signs that our body gives us, you can find a level that is most comfortable, that allows you to do the most with the least amount of shortness of breath. So hopefully this video helped, and if you have suggestions or tips or tricks that you have found to lessen the problems of shortness of breath, please share them in the comments below, because I think that's what most of the people on here are looking for, is tricks and tips to help make daily life easier, and probably shortness of breath is one of the biggest ones that is a hindrance. So hopefully I will be back in a little bit with the next video, new topic. Have a good one, and if you like the video, hit like and subscribe, share, all that good stuff. Thanks, you guys. Bye.